Have you ever stopped to think about it? Every single thing you do online, every purchase, every email, every single scroll is all happening inside this invisible framework of rules, the laws of cyberspace. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and take a look at what they are, from your personal data all the way up to digital battlefields. So let's start with something we all unfortunately relate to. You get that email, that notification that says security incident, and your heart just drops, right? Your private information is out there, and it feels like you're powerless. But that feeling, that's exactly where the laws of cyberspace really begin. So here's our roadmap. We're going to start small with you and what happens when your data gets breached. Then we'll zoom out to see how the government decides what's a crime and what isn't. From there, we go global. How do nations even handle digital borders? And finally, we'll get to the big one, the laws of cyber war. Okay, so let's dive right in at that personal level. Some company messes up, and now your data is gone. What can you actually do about it? What are your options? Well, let's look at a real-world example. The MoveIt data breach. This thing was an absolute nightmare. A single flaw and one piece of software that was used by hundreds and hundreds of companies. We're talking hospitals, government agencies, you name it. And just like that, millions of people had their personal info completely exposed. So your first instinct might be to sue, right? But in the U.S. federal court system, you've got to get past this big legal bouncer called Article 3 standing. Think of it like a ticket to get into court. And you can't just get a ticket by saying you're worried something bad might happen. You have to prove you've already been hurt in a real, concrete way. It's there to keep the courts from getting bogged down in what-if scenarios. And here's where it gets kind of tricky, but really important. As you can see, courts have basically created two lanes. If you can show there's a serious risk of future harm, like your social security numbers out there, you can probably sue for preventative stuff, like forcing the company to pay for credit monitoring. But if you want actual cash damages, you usually have to show that someone has already used your data to hurt you. It's that huge difference between what could be and what is. Okay, so that's the civil side of things, you versus a company. But what about when the government gets involved? Let's zoom out and look at what the U.S. actually considers a federal cybercrime, because it's probably not what you think. You know, for a long time, the good guys, the ethical hackers who find security flaws so companies can fix them, were in a really tough spot. So the Department of Justice came out and made things clear. As this quote shows, their goal is to support and clarify the rules for good faith security research, not to punish it. And to make it crystal clear, they gave some, well, pretty relatable examples. Lying about your height on a dating app, using a fake name on social media, checking sports scores on your work computer. Sure, you might be violating some website's terms of service, but the DOJ is saying that's not a federal crime. They're not interested in that stuff. So what are they focused on? It's all about unauthorized access. They're going after the digital burglars, the people breaking into computer systems where they have absolutely no business being. That's the real line in the sand. This lets them hunt down the real bad guys without criminalizing all the weird, harmless things we all do online. All right, we've covered the personal and the national. Now let's go global. We all understand physical borders, right? A line on a map. But what about digital borders? Is that even a thing? And what are the rules? Well, the core idea is surprisingly simple. International law basically says that a country's control, its sovereignty, extends to the physical parts of the internet inside its borders. We're talking the servers, the fiber optic cables, all of it. If it's on their soil, it's under their rules. But, and this is a big but, that control comes with a huge responsibility. It's called the due diligence principle. A country can't just turn a blind eye and let its territory become a launch pad for hackers. If a cyber attack starts inside its borders and causes serious damage to another country, it has a legal duty to do everything it can to stop it. And that leads us to the final level, the highest stakes question of all. In a world where a string of code can shut down a power grid or cripple a hospital, at what point does a cyber attack become an actual act of war? Now, in international law, there are two key thresholds here, and they are not the same. First, you have a use of force. That's any cyber operation that illegally breaks the rules of the UN Charter. It's wrongful. But then, there's an armed attack. That is the most serious level, the gravest form of force, and it is the only thing that gives a state the legal right to respond with military force in self-defense. So the obvious next question is, what does it take? What kind of cyber operation is so bad that it clears that incredibly high bar and gets classified as an armed attack? The answer comes down to something called the scale and effects test. It's all about the consequences in the physical world. Did the cyber attack cause massive physical destruction? Did people get seriously hurt or even die? If the answer is yes, that's an armed attack. But things like spying, stealing data, or even knocking non-essential services offline for a bit, as serious as those are, they don't meet that very specific, very high threshold. And even if an attack does meet that threshold, there's one last golden rule. Any response, whether it's a counter-cyber attack or traditional military strike, has to be necessary and proportionate. You can't launch a massive bombing campaign because someone hacked a government website. The punishment has to fit the crime. So there you have it, from a single person's data getting stolen all the way to a nation's right to digital self-defense. We are essentially trying to navigate this brand new digital world with a map that was drawn for the physical one. These laws were built for a world of atoms and armies, and now they have to govern a world of bits and bytes. So the real question isn't if these laws are going to be tested, it's how they're going to hold up when they are.